All right, I want to address the elephant in the room. You see, yesterday I put out a video on the news that there are certain games in the cloud service that we are going to be paying for, or maybe you're not going to be paying for, at the end of this month that are not supported by the cloud save service. Certain games like Splatoon 2 and Pokemon. I'm going to focus on those ones because I can't understand any of the reasoning behind the other ones. Like Dark Souls Remastered is not going to use cloud saves. Dead Cells, for some reason, isn't going to use cloud saves, which makes absolutely no sense to me. But we can argue that Nintendo has nothing to do with that. I can't be critical of Nintendo for third parties not wanting to check that box and use the cloud service for whatever reason. That is on them, and that I have to talk to them and get responses from them. But we can focus on Splatoon 2 and Pokemon because Nintendo obviously has a say. While they don't make Pokemon, they do publish it. They obviously could talk to Game Freak and work something out. And yes, Splatoon 2 is a first-party made game, so Nintendo has 100% control over the ability to cloud save that game. So, cloud save backups are not available on these two Nintendo properties. And a lot of people have come out to say that they understand why, and in fact, they think it's a good thing. And the reason they think it is a good thing is exactly the reasoning that Nintendo has now stated publicly. So when we put out that news yesterday, we got it from Game Informer. Game Informer did reach out to Nintendo, as did I, but Nintendo doesn't respond to me. But they did respond to Game Informer and essentially gave the reasoning that many of you were saying is why this is a good thing. And here is what Nintendo had to say. The vast majority of Nintendo Switch games will support save data cloud backup. However, in certain games, this feature would make it possible to, for example, regain items that have been traded to other players, or revert to a higher online multiplayer ranking that had been lost. To ensure fair play, save data cloud backup may not be enabled for such games. To ensure that save data cloud backups cannot be used to unfairly affect online multiplayer rankings, this feature will not be enabled in Splatoon 2. So, the two examples they give, you make it possible to, for example, regain items that have been traded to other players. That's in regards to Pokemon. And obviously reverting your online multiplayer ranking is regards to Splatoon 2. Now, Splatoon 1, you were able to do local backups. I don't know if people are aware of this or how many people did it. Wii U had local backups. It's a feature that Switch still doesn't have. But Wii U had local backups, and you could back up basically every game. I can't even think of a game you weren't able to back up on Wii U. Anyways, you were able to back up Splatoon. And what people did in Splatoon is whenever their ranking would fall, like you work really hard to get your rankings, and then you go on a little bit of a losing streak, and you don't want to lose your S ranking, right? Your S plus or whatever. Well, you would just restore your save file to your backed up one that had your prior ranking, and you would get your ranking back. And the reason that this could happen is because Nintendo, even today, but with Splatoon 1, did not store your ranking data on their servers. Instead, they stored it on your Switch. And I think the reasoning behind this is that Splatoon 1 was a completely P2P game, peer-to-peer. So the Switches were hosting the online matches. All Nintendo servers were really doing was just like a small connect people together kind of thing. Like, yeah, you all connect to this server so you can connect together in a lobby. It chooses who's a host, and then everything is just automatically managed that way once you connect everyone. And that's basically how peer-to-peer works. It requires very little server-side resources from Nintendo. It's a very cheap solution. And to make it even cheaper, Nintendo stored your ranking data, your actual online multiplayer stuff that can only be attained by playing online. They stored it on your system on Wii U. This enabled people to restore save states and get their rankings back. Basically, you could make it so you never lost rank. You could literally just count your wins, because you could just do a backup save after every win, and you can make your way all the way to the top without ever losing, even though you always lose. So it's a understandable thing that Nintendo doesn't want people to do that. The problem, and this is why I don't think people should be viewing this as a positive, is that Splatoon 2 works the same way. Splatoon 2 stores it's peer-to-peer, and it stores your ranking data on your Switch. So they don't want you having a backup of your save, because you could just save state, restore, and get your rankings back. This, to me, is just an excuse for Nintendo to not fix what was broken in the first place. I don't know if you guys are aware of this, because maybe you only play Splatoon 2 online and you don't play other multiplayer games. There are like no other multiplayer games in the world that store ranking data on your system. That's not where ranking data is stored, specifically to deal with this issue. This is an issue that is completely a non-issue for basically every other company, including indie companies that make online multiplayer games that have rankings. You do not store rankings locally on the system. There's a few reasons for that. It's not just because people can do save state restores. People that modify their systems could potentially get into the file and modify their rankings. You could tinker with the rankings. I don't know how common this is, especially on Wii U and Switch, but it is something that could be done since the data is all there. If you can access that data set and mess with it in a way that is not going to get caught by the system, you could theoretically rank yourself up. And it's very dangerous to store those rankings on a system for multiple reasons. And Nintendo's still doing it. They're still doing it for Splatoon 2. To me, this is not the solution. You enable cloud backups and you get your butts to work right now on completely changing how the Splatoon 2 system works, or you ensure that people in the future, or Splatoon 3 or whatever, doesn't do it this way. Now, you might say, well, they still got to keep it fair for Splatoon people. Here's the thing. This particular Splatoon game involves a very, very lengthy DLC single-player mode. So you have the single-player mode in the original game and an extremely 80-plus level or whatever single-player mode. I haven't even beaten it yet in the Octo expansion. So you have potentially 50, 60, 70 hours of single-player content here that people are not going to want to lose their progress on. And the number one issue with Switch right now is if you turn on your Switch one day and your save data is corrupted, you drop your Switch gets stolen, God forbid. Your Switch overheats because you're just at 115 degree weather and you don't have AC and it just overheats or whatever. Whatever extenuating circumstance happens that could cause damage to your Switch and or damage to the data on your Switch, you cannot get that progress back. So not only are you losing your rankings, which by the way, that's a pretty damn big deal. That when you're playing Splatoon 2 online, you could have 700 hours sunk into that thing and you could be X ranking everything. But because you dropped your Switch, you lost all of your progress. That not just single player, multiplayer progress too. You lose all of it. This is ridiculous. This should not be okay. You should not be defending this. You should be telling Nintendo, no, let us back up our data because that is way more important than the people that are going to cheat the system, and then work on making the system better like everyone else. Work on converting the data into your own servers. Now, here's the thing. This is also why I don't think we're getting dedicated servers for games. Nintendo isn't even willing to store data for Splatoon 2, and you think we're getting dedicated servers to play games? Come on, let's be realistic here. Yeah, sure, we might get them someday, but it's not going to be because of this service, and it's not going to be for many, many years. Maybe not until the next iteration of Switch or whatever's next. And because remember, Nintendo seems to always be behind on online stuff, and this is just like another, really? Nintendo's storing that crap on your Switch? Why? It's the stupidest thing ever. You don't need it unless you can access the internet, so why isn't it on your Switch? Anyways, that's one situation. Now we have the Pokemon situation, which is a lot more complex than the situation with Splatoon, because they have kind of a backup system in place. It's not really a backup system, but it is a way to not lose certain Pokemon. So they have a service called Pokemon Bank for $5 per year. Yes, very cheap. I don't even know why they bother to charge, but whatever. $5 per year. You can store, I think it's like 3,000 Pokemon. And you would say, that's more Pokemon than there are. Yeah, people store multiple Pokemon, multiple versions of Pokemon, different EVs, IVs. Like, people could fill that. I'm sure there's someone out there that's got a full Pokemon Bank. The Pokemon Bank's purpose is basically a few things. One, to store your Pokemon from your games. So you could store them online securely, whatever. Something happens to your game, you can get those Pokemon back. You can transfer your Pokemon between games through Pokemon Bank. That's really one of the biggest features, is you could just bank all your Pokemon from different games into there and then bring them into other games. It's just a lot more convenient for a lot of people than trying to keep multiple systems and multiple cartridges around and trying to do all these cross-game transfers and all that stuff. It can get a little dicey at times. Something that doesn't work. Pokemon Bank fixes all of that. And as some people say, it also gives that anti-cheat measure where if people could, restore saves of their games, they could, trade Pokemon off, because you could trade Pokemon through Pokemon Bank. They could trade them off, restore their save state, and have those Pokemon still. Because basically what you would do is you would trade for those Pokemon, get those Pokemon in your game, put those Pokemon in the bank, and then restore your save state, get those Pokemon out of your bank, and you have your old Pokemon as well. It's a very interesting thing, but I think there's a couple ways to solve this issue that people worry about. Because someone talked about competitive scene. It turns out that the competitive scene, this isn't as big an issue for, because the worry in the competitive scene with duplicate Pokemon and stuff doesn't really matter, because they already have measures in place that prevent duplicate Pokemon. So that's the competitive scene's actually fine. They're not affected by this at all. This is more so for the trade market, right? Because honestly, I don't care if someone out there does this a zillion times and they end up with every single Pokemon ever and they didn't catch them and they didn't put in the work. What do I care what they're doing with their game? This is just like, if someone hacks their Switch and they're watching Netflix on it right now, why do I care if they're doing that, right? It doesn't affect me. It doesn't bother me. If they hack their Switch and they're pirating, a whole bunch of NES and SNES games, yeah, that might suck for Nintendo. Well, it doesn't affect me. So I don't really care if people do this for their own personal uses in a single player aspect. It doesn't, who cares? It literally has zero impact on me. But I will say there's ways to prevent this so it doesn't affect the actual bank, because the worry is it makes Pokemon not as valuable, because you could just flood the market with the same legendaries and the same shinies and all that stuff over and over again, and thus make it have no penalty for trading, and thus basically the trade market is irrelevant. It would be like taking the World of Warcraft auction house and just making it unlimited for anything, so suddenly the values of everything drops, and it just doesn't really feel that great to trade anymore, which I don't really know if that matters, because the whole purpose of trading is to get what you want, so who really cares about the values? But whatever, some people care about that stuff. The solution's quite simple. And this is why we need to stop saying that it's okay not to have backup saves for Pokemon, because bank exists and because we don't want bank to be abused. Two things. One, on the point of the duplicate Pokemon, there's two ways they can deal with this. And I mean, these are simple measures that they could code into bank and they could code into the games to make this happen. One, they can make it so even if someone does save state restore and get their Pokemon back, you cannot trade the same Pokemon twice through bank. So what does that mean? What that means is, say I have a Charizard, right? We'll just not necessarily legendary, but we'll just say is shiny Charizard a thing? I don't even know. There's so many Pokemon, so many shiny. Anyways, so you trade that Charizard, and then you save state restore. You get that Pokemon, you put it in your whatever you traded for, you put it in your bank, you save state restore, get your Charizard back, pull your Pokemon out of the bank. Okay, everything sounds hunky-dory, right? Well, here's the thing. Make it so if I try to trade that Charizard again, they are tracking my trades. So they know, hey, this user has already traded a Charizard. They are not allowed to trade another Charizard. Done deal. And they can do that for shinies. They can do that for I don't know if Charizard's a good example, but shinies and legendaries and those really hard, those super rare, hard to get Pokemon, they can make it so you only can trade them one time. And you're like, that's a really limiting restriction, right? Okay, fine. Here's another solution. This is another simple to implement solution that basically involves they just have a server doing checks on users, right? That's all I'm asking them to do. They already have servers storing stuff. They could easily code in some checks. And this check is a rather simple check. When you go to put a Pokemon in Pokemon Bank, all you do is require that in transferring that Pokemon, you are okaying them to update your save file in the cloud to your current state. So what happens then? I trade that Charizard. I get that Pokemon. I go to put that Pokemon in the bank so I don't lose it and I can bring back my save state. Well, in putting that Pokemon in the bank, guess what just happened? My save state was overwritten, and now when I go to pull my save state back, it's just the same save file that I had when I put the Pokemon in Pokemon Bank. Problem solved. It's that simple. Yes, people could still trade that Charizard and then save state return to get that Charizard back, but they're not going to have the Pokemon they traded for in the first place, defeating the purpose of the trade. You can deal with these issues quite simply, and don't give me this whole, oh, you're not a game developer. I'm a programmer, gosh darn it. Like, I know how this works. They can program this in. It's not an impossibility. We're not talking about functionality that is hard to implement. We're talking about something they just have to want to do in the first place. Instead, their solution is, well, you know what? All of this is fine if we just don't allow people to back up their games. And here's the problem with not allowing people to back up games. And this is where some people who said, well, who cares about backing up games? Pokemon Bank. Fine. Who cares about backing up games Pokemon Bank? So say I have all of my Pokemon in the bank except the 6 I am using in the game at the moment for multiplayer purposes or whatever. And the 6 I am using are my ideal lineup, include some legendaries and all that stuff, right? All of a sudden, I drop my Switch. Just randomly drop it. Boom. Can't access that save file anymore. Guess what Pokemon I just lost? Pokemon that took me hundreds of hours to obtain are gone. Not just that. The story progress is gone. And you might say, oh, who cares about the story progress? Dude, sometimes the story takes 40, 50, 60 hours. You think I want to replay that? No. I already beat that story, and I'm at a certain point with certain things unlocked in the game and certain towns unlocked in the game that I want access to at all times. I don't want to have to redo my progress to do that. It's not just about the Pokemon. What about the items? Guys, we're talking about what is primarily a single-player RPG game that happens to have a multiplayer aspect to it. We should not be sacrificing the integrity of the potential of losing our data just to protect against cheating that can be solved through other methods without taking away the ability to back up your saves. And you might say, they're not taking anything away because they've never offered us the ability to back up our saves. Here's the deal. You know what's happening right now? People who want to do these methods that Nintendo's talking about, they're hacking their 3DS, they're hacking their Switch, they're downloading the files anyways, and doing the restore anyways, and duplicating Pokemon! They're already doing it! So the methods they're currently using doesn't even stop what we're worried about here. This is where I am so frustrated with people defending this practice and saying it's so positive. They're not actually solving the problem. They're harming legit consumers that wouldn't even have that thought cross their mind to do a save state restore, right? So they're harming legit consumers over the threat of this happening when it's already happening. So yeah, maybe it might happen a little bit more. Guess what? Fix your stuff the right way and you wouldn't have to worry about it, and then everyone can be happy. There is an equilibrium here where we can have our cake and eat it too. Stop making excuses for Game Freak. Stop making excuses for Nintendo and Splatoon 2. I get what Nintendo is saying. What they are admitting is we suck at anti-cheating. So instead we're going to take away a user-friendly feature. No. We should not just accept this. We should not just say, that's okay, we understand. No, we shouldn't understand. We shouldn't understand why multiple generations of Pokemon games, pretty much since the GameCube days, are not able to be backed up because Game Freak is unwilling to actually put in the anti-cheat measure needed to actually stop this happening when it's already happening. There's a way to stop it, and they are not doing anything about it. There's a way to make Splatoon 2 better by putting the rankings online. They could already do this, but they're just not. And we shouldn't be okay with this. And if nothing else, I am glad that this is happening with the cloud service because Pokemon's been having this happen for generations, right? This is the first time it's happened with Splatoon because Splatoon 1 you could back up. But Pokemon has had this issue for generations and generations, and it's basically just gone ignored. People haven't paid attention. But now that we are paying for the ability to back up our games, bare minimum, we expect to be able to back up every single Nintendo published game on the system. The fact we cannot do that is a problem, and the reasons they are giving are basically admitting we suck at creating basic anti-cheat measures. We're not talking about super complex stuff here. All it requires is servers doing online checks and storing data on servers. Stop doing P2P bullcrap. And hence, that's really what we're running into right now. Our data that we need to be saved for single-player purposes is now 100% going to be compromised on Switch forever with Splatoon 2 and Pokemon because Nintendo's not going to actually fix the real problem. They're just going to take a feature away that we should be expecting to have at this point in 2018. Again, if you think this is acceptable, I don't know what to say to you. Because at this point, you and I are never, ever going to see eye to eye on this being okay. They should enable the cloud saves and work hard on their butts behind the scenes to fix the real issues that are occurring. Because guess what? People are still cheating in Splatoon. You know what's worse than a save state restore in Splatoon? How about people modifying their weapons with different abilities and different stats and using that in online play? I think that's an issue that's currently happening in Splatoon 2. That's a way bigger issue than people save state restoring to rankings they've at least had at one point. You know what's a bigger issue in Pokemon? How about the fact that people are trading modified Pokemon? Like, you can't do it through the bank, but they're trading modified Pokemon to local friends who don't know that those Pokemon have been modified, and they're screwing people of that. How about the people that are basically black marketing the Pokemon market? That to me seems like a lot bigger deal than worrying about, oh, someone made a copy of a Pokemon through a save state. Who gives a crap? In the grand scheme, there are way bigger issues to tackle. These excuses are not valid excuses. These are admitting we suck at what we do as video game creators. We suck at protecting your data, and we're giving you these lame excuses for why we're not going to enable a basic feature that should be required of all games at this point. There is no reason I could back up my Call of Duty single-player campaign data, but I can't back up Splatoon 2. There's no reason that I could back up every RPG ever made on PlayStation or Xbox, but I cannot back up Pokemon because, oh my god, there's online trades. There's online trades in other games too. You know what they did? They figured the shit out. Figure it out, Nintendo. Figure it out, Game Freak. And you guys that are defending this crap, screw you too. Because you guys are the reason that Nintendo doesn't fix their stuff. Because you just accept it. You blindly accept they are doing this and that it's a positive. This reasoning Nintendo gave, there are people clapping and cheering and, yeah, you go, Nintendo. You're worried about cheaters. If they were really worried about cheaters, they would fix the core issues in the first place rather than worrying about people protecting their own data. Anyways, folks, I'm Nathaniel Ruffledance from Nintendo Prime, and if you like this video, you know what to do, and if you dislike the video, hit that dislike button, subscribe for more content, and I will catch you in the next one.